Hello everyone, this is my wife's 2011 Ford Flex that we've owned since new. She loves this car, and it just hit 120,000 miles. With heavy rains last week, the sunroof started leaking inside the car. My wife took her to the Ford dealer and called me in a panic because she was quoted over $3,500 to repair it. The service manager said the Sunroof Panel Tray had a broken hose drain connector and they had to replace the tray and drop the entire roof panel, noting it was a huge pain in the butt. I explained that we really couldn't afford the repair at this time as work has been really slow for us. I told my wife I was confident this could be done at home, and that if it didn't work out, that we either had to shell out a bunch of money to fix it or get another car. And no, if you're wondering, my wife is not a fan of having a duct-taped sunroof. Full disclosure, I am not a professional mechanic. I've done brake jobs, suspension work, clutches, transmission swaps, motor swaps, seat interior, metal fabrication, wiring, glass install, basically everything but mounting tires and paint. Again, I am not a professional mechanic. Attempt this procedure at your own risk. First off, if you don't have a set of factory service manuals, eBay has a few sets for less than $80. I ordered the required parts and then some, not knowing what I was going to get into once this was all blown apart. I ordered a new roof panel tray, a sunroof seal, and drain hoses. And with using the factory service manual, I will pass along the knowledge I've learned. The tools needed are socket wrenches and extensions, torque wrench, a 7mm socket, T20 and T50 torque bit sockets, a T20 torque screwdriver, a 10mm socket, trim tools, pliers, and blue Loctite. Optional items are a power driver, some Ziploc bags, some gloves, and lunch. So the first thing I did was to initialize the roof panel motor. The manual says to do this when making repairs to the sunroof panel and or replacing the motor itself. To do this, you do the following. So after I did all of this, I opened the sunroof to the vented position and removed the 4 sunroof glass screws using a T20 Torx bit, and carefully hold on to the glass while doing so. After all 4 screws are removed, from the outside of the car, carefully remove the sunroof glass and place it in a safe area. Quickly inspecting the seal, you can see where the seal has opened up, but it's still soft, but I'm still going to replace it. Because the door is going to be open for quite some time on this repair, you can disconnect the battery if you're worried about running it down. Also, take some pictures as you go so you have your own references. I also stocked up on Ziploc bags because as I removed the items, I placed them all in separate bags for ease of finding them later when I'm trying to put this all back together. Start with the interior trim panels. This is the A pillar, that's the B pillar, that's the C pillar, and that's the D pillar. Starting with the front doors, remove the lower scuff plates using a trim tool in your hands. Using some tape, it's helpful to mark one of them which side is which because it'll speed up reassembly. Moving on to the A pillars, move aside the weather stripping and gently pull the plastic trim panel using your hands and a trim tool. It's helpful to use a pair of small pliers to twist the retaining plastic wire to remove the panel. Disconnect the speaker wiring if equipped. While it's not absolutely necessary to remove the panel, it's a lot easier to work with them out of the way. Moving on to the middle section, pull up the lower foot scuff plate and use the trim tool to remove. The lower weather strip is attached to the clip inside the scuff plate, so be careful removing it. Removing the clip and putting it back on the door sill will help in reassembly. Repeat the process for the other side. On the B pillars, loosen the lower trim panel by using a trim tool in your hands. Remove the B pillar seatbelt cover using a small screwdriver to push in the tabs on the sides. Remove the seatbelt bolt with a T50 Torx bit. Remove the seatbelt and loosen the lower trim panel to get to the upper trim panel bolt, which is a 7mm socket. Remove the screw and remove the panel with the trim tool in your hands. I'm using both hand tools and a power ratchet in certain areas while doing this repair. On the C-pillars, remove the upper trim panel bolt cover and remove the C-pillar bolt with a 7mm socket. Pull outward to remove the C-panel trim. Be sure to keep your hands clean during removal and installation to keep the headliner clean. Moving on to the D-pillars, open the 2 trim bolt covers and remove those bolts with a 7mm socket. Remove the D trim panels by pulling outward with your hands and using a trim tool. Remember to disconnect the speaker electrical connectors if equipped. If you have any panel clips that come off the panel and stay in the frame, make sure to remove them and put back on the panel. It makes reassembly a lot easier. Position the third row seats to the fold position. Now make sure to hydrate and eat some food. Your body will thank you. Let's move on to the roof panel. Remove the sun visors, sun visor clips, and the passenger, oh boy, handle using the T20 Torx bit driver and or socket. Remove the sunglasses holder and lights with a trim tool and disconnect the electrical connector and rear view mirror electrical connection. Remove the middle row lighted handles with a T20 Torx bit driver. Disconnect the connectors by pushing on the tabs. Having a Torx screwdriver with a long shank works really well here. Remove the rear dome lamp using a trim tool. Disconnect the electrical connectors. Pull downward on the sunshade frame at the rear of the back window opening to release the sunshade frame pin connectors, which are held by some strong magnets. Position items like some Girl Scout boxes to hold up your headliner. Release the rear headliner pin retainer. If you have an overhead console installed in your Flex, then you might need to remove this and or disconnect the electrical connectors as well. Now you can lower the headliner. So you can see the rear pin connector here in the middle of the back end of the headliner. Moving on to the middle section, you can see where the shade screens are and how they operate. Moving on to the front, you can see where the sunroof shade is and how it slides in and out. Moving over to the driver's side, I'm just taking in the whole area. The roof panel is a really large one-piece item. To remove it from the car, the manual says you have to remove the rear trunk hatch and that you actually damage the panel upon removal and that it's a one-time use item. Anyways, going back to the passenger side, you can see the broken drain hose connector and how the hose would just lay into the headliner and dump water inside. Here's a look at the driver's side drain hose connector intact. So these are the rear drain hose connectors. They connect from the rear panel tray assembly and go towards the rear of the car where it exits near the wheels. The passenger side hose meeting up where the rear wiper fluid hose is. This is the driver's side rear drain hose connector. It connects from the rear panel tray assembly and goes toward the rear of the car, exiting at the rear wheel. Okay, so now we are going to remove the sunroof panel frame. Disconnect the 4 drain hoses from each corner of the panel frame. Disconnect the sunroof motor electrical connector and disconnect the rear view mirror light electrical connectors if you already haven't done so. Support the panel and remove the 12 panel frame bolts using a 10mm socket. Note which 10mm bolts are silver colored and darker colored. Take a picture of them so to be sure to put them back in the correct location. Be mindful when removing the panel frame not to snag either of the rear drain hoses or the rear window washer fluid line. Here you can see the sunroof panel tray hose connector as it was broken off. This is how big the drain hose connector should be. With the new panel, you have to transfer over the sunroof motor, the shade bracket, the rear brackets, the middle magnets, some washers, and some Velcro connectors. Remove the sunroof motor by removing the 3 screws with the T20 Torx bit. Transfer over the 3 Velcro sunshade stoppers in the front section. Transfer over the sunroof shade by gently moving aside the rear drain assembly ends and slide the shade out. Gently move aside the sunroof visor end clips and slide the sunroof front visor out. Transfer over these 4 front washers to the new panel. I held them in place on the new panel with a little dab of clear silicone. Note and mark off where the super strong magnets go onto the new panel frame. Gently pry them off with a small screwdriver and note they are strong and will try to escape. I checked over all the drain hoses in the car and ran some warm water with a bit of soap through them and blew some air through them to clear the lines. I checked all the lines as they were in good shape with no cracks and they weren't dry or brittle. So on to reassembly. Starting with the roof panel frame, moving aside the rear drip line clips, slide the sunshade back into position. Then slide in the sunroof visor and gently slide the 2 end clips into place. Before installing the sunroof motor, you need to align the sunroof tracks. Remember, we took this out with the sunroof in the vented position. We need to make sure that it is aligned with the motor. Slide these tracks on either side of the sunroof panel frame until these arms align with one another using a small pick or an Allen wrench to confirm that it is aligned correctly. Once confirmed they are timed correctly, you are good to install the sunroof motor again. There is a manual override on the motor to retime the motor to the tracks if this doesn't align correctly for you. There's endless videos on YouTube on how to replace sunroof seals, and I'm just quickly going over this as I did it. Note where the bottom of the seal direction is. There's a little extra lip on the seal. and that goes towards the bottom. You remove the old seal, and you clean the glass and the glass edges with window cleaner. Soap and water works well. And make sure the channel that the sunroof seal is in is clean and clear of any old seal or debris. Fitting the new seal around, I start in the corner, position the new seal onto the glass by pressing it in versus trying to slide the seal on. Will leave you a really large gap that you'll have to walk back in, at least 2 or 3 inches. If you start by pressing the seal in as you go, you should have just enough to go around without stretching it and have just about an inch or so extra. When finishing that up, just walk back the seal towards the corners and use a little soapy water to make it a little bit more pliable. This repair does require a bit of patience, so to be sure to have some on hand. And speaking of hands, an extra pair of hands to help at times would make sections go by a bit easier. But as you can see, it is possible to do this with only one person. When putting the panel frame back into the car, I cut a section of the box it came in, and I used that like a pizza peel for moving it back into the car. Slide the sunroof panel frame back into the car, and support the panel frame while you get ready to install the bolts. Install the 12 panel frame bolts used in 10mm socket. Be sure of the location of the silver bolts versus the dark colored ones. Torque down to 53 inch-pounds. That's inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. If you don't know the difference between the two, please look them up. There's a big difference. As I said, I'm not a professional mechanic, but please look up the difference. Connect the sunroof motor connector. Connect the 4 drain hoses from each corner of the panel frame. Now would be a great time to check your hose connections. I ran some warm water through each line section. I know you can also use some compressed air or use your air compressor to do this, but I've read you can actually disengage the hose from the connector this way. If you have clogged lines, there are a lot of YouTube videos showing you how to free them up by using a very flexible garden edge trimmer wire to do this. I would install the sunroof glass at this time to check the operation, just in case, but I didn't do it at this time. In hindsight, sure, why not? Everything's already down. Instead, I used my head to put the roof panel back up. The magnets should hold it up. I used some of the Girl Scout boxes to hold it up just in case. To start securing the roof panel in place, I started with the middle section side-lighted handles. Connect the power clip and using the T20 Torx bit screwdriver to screw the handles in. Adjust the weather strip around the headliner in this section. Install the front sun visors and sun visor clips using the T20 Torx bit. Install the rear view mirror connector and install the eyeglass holder and the lights panel clip and snap into place. Install the passenger safety handle with a T20 Torx bit screwdriver. Install the rear dome lamp electrical connector and snap into place. D-pillars. Remove any trim connectors that are still in place on the frame. Connect the speaker connections if equipped. Snap the panel back into place and put the 2 trim bolts back in using a 7mm socket. Snap in the trim bolt cover plates. C-pillars. Push on the upper trim panel and install the bolt with a 7mm socket. Snap in the bolt cover. Move the weather strip into place around the top section. V-pillars. Push on the upper trim panel and screw in the bolt with a 7mm socket. Snap in the lower trim panel and move the lower weather strip in place. Using some blue Loctite on the seatbelt bolt, install it with a T50 Torx bit. Torque the bolt down to 30 foot-pounds. That's 30 foot-pounds of torque, not inch-pounds. If you don't know the difference, please look it up. Install the seatbelt cover by pushing the clip into place. Position the upper weather strip into place. Attach the lower scuff plates by positioning the weather strip into place and attach the plates to the car with your hands. Moving on to the A-pillars, move aside the weather stripping, install the plastic trim panel wire into place by gently twisting by using a small pair of pliers. Connect the speaker wiring if equipped. Snap the panel into place. On the front doors, install the lower scuff plates with your hands. And that is that. With the repair made and checked, I installed the sunroof glass and aligned the glass to the roof of the car by adjusting the 4 T20 Torx screws. I did this by using some magnets and a straight edge on top of the car to check the gap. The clearance should be 0 to 1 millimeter of space. Would I do this repair again? Absolutely. It wasn't that bad. It did take me a full day, and that was with filming, taking breaks, eating a dozen Girl Scout cookies, and taking my time. Did I save money? Yeah. over $2,000 of labor cost. Is lowering the headliner a big pain in the butt? And removing the sunroof panel really that difficult? Well, compared to doing a clutch job outdoors on a gravel driveway in the wintertime without a lift, this repair seems like a cakewalk. Compared to changing out rusty wheel bearings on a Subaru from Vermont, this is easy. Compared to changing your oil or disc brakes, well, this might be a bit harder. But most of the fear is not knowing what is going to happen, and hopefully this helps someone out there in the video universe. Could you do this repair? Having the right tools do matter. If you have a mishmash of assorted tools that aren't on this list and don't work right, and you're using a rusty ratchet, well, this repair may take you a little bit longer. If you have some nicer ratchets and power drivers with the correct bits and extensions, then you'll be stellar. And if you're like me and have a little bit of everything in your toolbox, then you will come out just fine. If you have any comments, please let me know. And while we're making very little content on our channel, if you have any interest in following a few car nerds around while we build a drift car, fix our broken cars, maintain our daily driven cars, and get ramen and donuts, well, then follow us. Come on, like and subscribe and all that jazz. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a great day.